Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, January 17th, 2023, and today we are going to be talking about Kari Lake, the Republican nominee for governor in the state of Arizona, who is reportedly considering a bid for Senate in 2024 against incumbent independent Kyrsten Sinema from the state of Arizona. Now, Kari Lake's name might ring a bell because we spent a lot of time talking about her. Personally, I expected her to win the governorship in the 2022 midterm elections, but she ended up losing to then Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, who is now the Democratic governor of the state of Arizona. Now, following her loss, Kari Lake has gone on many news streams, many different forms of outlets to reach the American public, reach the Arizona public, to claim that her election was stolen. On the same tune of President Donald Trump, she has no verifiable information that in any way indicates that the election, in fact, was rigged against Kari Lake. Regardless, though, after her loss, she has maintained a prominent media presence, one that many people are expecting and potentially weighing as a pivot point to announce her bid for Senate in 2024. Now, Kari Lake running for Senate would be a pretty bad move on the Republican side, to put it very lightly. We'll talk more about why I personally believe this, but there are many factors that really go into a way that a state may vote, and a lot of the times they don't like repeat candidates, especially ones that refuse to accept the election results. You see, taking a look at where we were just a few weeks ago before Kyrsten Sinema made the announcement, or even directly after Kyrsten Sinema made the announcement that she was running for Senate, we have this screen capture from Wikipedia's December 18th iteration of the United States Senate election in Arizona in 2024. And on the Republican side, Kari Lake had initially declined that she was going to run, largely because she was pushing this narrative that she had been the actual elected governor from the state of Arizona. But when Kyrsten Sinema decided to switch over to be an independent, and around this time frame, it was very clear that Republicans were considering their options, weighing who they should nominate, because it made things, in theory, a lot easier for Republicans should a Democrat and independent run for Senate, especially considering that that independent would be the former Democratic senator from the state. But Kari Lake saying great news in response to this sort of shifted the way that many people looked at how she was going to see her political future. It's no secret that Kari Lake expected to win the governorship, and after losing was quite embarrassing, especially the way that she had talked herself up during the campaign and led as if she had already won. And many people did expect her to win, don't get me wrong. She was, in a way, a stronger candidate than Blake Masters because she got a lot closer to winning the governorship versus Katie Hobbs. But the problem is that she still ended up losing. And with that loss, she has carried a lot of this discussion about fraud and electoral decertification. A lot of the same things that were utilized against Biden and the Democratic Party back in 2020 that entirely was unfounded. But then now, in our current iteration of the Senate election in Arizona, despite Kari Lake's endorsement of Mark Lamb, the Pinal County sheriff, who was elected in 2016, she has endorsed him, but is now back in the area of potential. Doug Ducey could have considered a bid, and now he's out of the way. So with Kari Lake back into the equation, there is a very good chance that Kari Lake could decide to remove her endorsement from Mark Lamb and decide to run for Senate herself, especially considering that the judges in the state of Arizona recently have thrown out her request to decertify the election results or to obstruct the free and fair election that occurred in the state of Arizona. The margin was close. Kari Lake almost was the governor of Arizona, and I think that is enough to tell us that she very well could be senator in 2024 under interesting circumstances. And we'll talk about those circumstances. But now knowing that there are sources close to Kari Lake saying that she is considering a run for Senate, I think this would be a bad move, even though she has a chance at victory. The reason why she would have a chance at victory, solely and only because Arizona at heart is a swing state, but very much trending blue. Arizona's leftward trend really started in the 2016 election. For a bit more context and background as to why I think that this would not be necessarily the best choice, because voters in Arizona have shifted away from Donald Trump and those like him for the past 6 years. In 2016, despite Mitt Romney winning the state of Arizona by 9 points in 2012 and Hillary Clinton's severe underperformance relative to President Obama from 2012, she still came within 4 points of beating Donald Trump in the state of Arizona. Donald Trump only received 48.1% of the vote to Hillary Clinton's 44.6% of the vote. a 3.5% margin. And then came 2018. This is when you really saw Democrats show out in full force and elected Kyrsten Sinema, then a representative from Arizona, to the United States Senate, the first time a Democrat had won in decades. Then came the 2020 presidential election, and Joe Biden flipped the state of Arizona for the first time since 1996. And then you head over to the Senate election that occurred. Mark Kelly defeated Martha McSally by 2.4% in the Arizona Senate race. So as you can see, got bluer, then bluer, then bluer. And then in 2022, not only did Kari Lake, the Republican we're talking about here, lose the governorship in a shocking upset, but in the Senate race, Mark Kelly, the Democrat, won by 4.5%, nearly 5 points across the state of Arizona. The point being, it got bluer and bluer and bluer and bluer. And now we are here today looking ahead to 2024. And the Republicans have a candidate who very well could win the nomination. Do not get me wrong, but would likely lose the general election. So as you can see, and the reason why I also showed you the past election results is because there is one overarching factor on the Republican side that impacted every election 2016 through 2022, and that was President Donald Trump. It was President Donald Trump being unpopular in 2018, continuing that level of unpopularity in 2020 and losing the election that he was on the ballot for, then putting his foot on the scale when it came down to the governor's race and Senate race, endorsing Blake Masters, winning him that nomination over the Attorney General of Arizona, Mark Brnovich, who refused to overturn the election results for Donald Trump. He got his payback by pushing him down, elevating Blake Masters. Brnovich, for a while, was seen as the frontrunner. In fact, another frontrunner was seen as the for sure easy victory pick for the Republican Party, which was Governor Doug Ducey, who maintained an exceptional level of popularity, won in 2018 against a Democrat by 14 points on the same ballot that Democrats were winning by 3 across the state. But then Donald Trump said, if you run in this race, I will endorse even potentially a Democrat against you. Obviously, that wasn't going to push Doug Ducey to run for the seat. Doug Ducey decided against it. Mark Brnovich took his place. Still, he lost to Blake Masters. And you know what happened? The Democrats won. In the governor's race, Mike Pence endorsed Kari Lake's opponent, Karen Taylor Robson. If Robson had won the nomination, I have no doubt that Robson would have won the election. But Kari Lake was endorsed by Trump. So there is one common denominator that has really impacted the Republicans very negatively in the state of Arizona, and that is President Donald Trump. He has been the reason why Republicans have lost continuously in this state over the past 6 years. And he may be the reason why they lose in 2024. Kari Lake as this potential nominee would be, in a way, cataclysmic for the Republican Party. Arizona is a winnable state for the GOP. They simply have just been putting up lackluster and unwinnable candidates towards the general election. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that Republican primary voters are amongst the most right-wing. When you think about those who care enough to actually vote in the primary, it's a small section of a political party, and usually the most extreme. That's why those who are elected in Congress in safe seats, their elections are really determined by the initial primary election. But those who vote the most tend to be the most extreme, contributing to this polarized and dichotomy between the two candidates that show them on very opposite ends of the spectrum, even though the average American is way more towards the middle. In this case in Arizona, because Kari Lake Republican voters in the past, she very well could do it again, especially if her influence is already starting to benefit Mark Lamb in a way simply by the merit of her endorsement. Now, Kyrsten Sinema switching political parties has definitely changed what we see here in Axios from their Phoenix office about how it changes the electoral math. And we talked about this when Kyrsten Sinema made this announcement because it was relevant and was extremely important and continues to be extremely important for the next 2 years as we go into 2024. The problem lies that Kyrsten Sinema has filed paperwork to run as an independent for Senate in Arizona, meaning that she already has the means to bypass either primary process. The Democratic primary, on the other hand, nobody has announced that they are deciding to run, though there is publicly expressed interest from Ruben Gallego, a U.S. representative from Arizona's 7th, and Greg Stanton, a U.S. representative from Arizona's 9th District. Those who are considering running have said so publicly, But the problem lies in the fact that if they do run, and so does Kyrsten Sinema, they will be splitting the same vote. The competitiveness of Arizona in the past means that Democrats can't afford to lose a single voter. Imagine if a former Democrat who was an incumbent governor at the time decided to run as an independent in 2022 against Katie Hobbs. Considering how close she won by, 0.66%, it's very likely that with the inclusion of an additional former Democrat in the race, that Katie Hobbs would have absolutely lost. Because the thing is, there are Democratic voters that will only vote for Kyrsten Sinema. Why did she run as an independent? Well, here's the thing. She knew she was going to lose the primary. Plainly put, she's not popular amongst the Democratic Party. She was polling at 16-17% when it came down to head-to-head matchups against a U.S. representative, someone who doesn't even have statewide recognition. Every single head-to-head matchup, Kyrsten Sinema lost, including multi-way primaries where there was a plurality victor, which in fact was not her. The main takeaway here, Kyrsten Sinema was going to lose the Democratic primary, and she knew it. So she decided to leave the party. You might be wondering, okay, well, why didn't she just run as a Democrat, and then if she lost the primary, she ran as an independent? Well, Arizona has what we call sore loser laws, which means if you lose the primary, you cannot run in the general election because they don't want party spoilers. Now, on the Republican side, the thing is that Kari Lake probably wouldn't do the same thing. It really doesn't make sense, and her best chance at victory is through the Republican nomination. But now that she's in a position where there's a potential opportunity for an independent and a Democrat to be on the ballot, Kari Lake really does elevate in terms of a possibility at winning. I don't think she's the likeliest, I don't think she's strong, and I don't think that she's going to come into this with any type of electoral mandate. But the thing is, she doesn't need that. All she needs is to win the nomination, and if Democrats do run a candidate, Kari Lake wins. I am confident that should Sinema and a Democrat run on the same ballot, that the Republican would end up winning. Unfortunately for Democrats, it may just be the one person they never wanted to see in political office ever again or at any point, and that is Kari Lake. Coming off of a governor election where she performed with 49.6% of the vote, she still has supporters. She wasn't completely obliterated. This was not some total rejection against Trumpism and Kari Lakeism. This was a nudged across the finish line victory by the Democratic Party. That is all that it was and all that it should be interpreted to be. It was a pushback, but not a heavy one. And it means that in the future, should the political environment be slightly better or a better performing top-tier Republican on the national level when it comes down to the presidential election, I have confidence that someone like Kari Lake could win, especially with the opportunity to run against a former Democrat and a Democratic nominee. The math doesn't work out too heavily, and I think that is the reason why Kari Lake is now considering a run for Senate. Because before, it didn't look like it was going to be anything but a matchup between Sinema and a Republican, but now it very well may be a three-way race, except this time, Republicans are the ones who will likely come out on top. And Kari Lake knows this. If she has the opportunity to be in the Senate, she will take that opportunity. Kari Lake is an opportunist. Kari Lake, and I don't say that in a negative way, I say it as someone who looks at it, at least hopefully objectively. Kari Lake springing herself into this race, removing that declining factor from her name on this Senate bid, now considering a run for Senate despite already endorsing someone following a decision by the incumbent former Democratic senator, makes her, plainly put, an opportunist. But beyond that, she's not this overarching electable figure, but she certainly thinks of herself as such. She lost the governor election, but still refers to herself as the duly elected governor, and that's the problem. That mindset is what is going to lead Kari Lake to potentially run in this Senate race. The question now is for Democrats. Do they run someone with the possibility that Kari Lake becomes the next senator from the state of Arizona? They may be able to hold out on a moderate Republican, maybe Karen Taylor Robson could be that Republican where they're saying, okay, she's not the worst, but she's certainly not someone we would want in the Senate. But Kari Lake, on the other hand, would do a lot of damage. And she would not be someone that Democrats would be able to easily take down in the future. I think the problem is that once you start with that high level of incumbency, once you start to, build a rapport amongst the public, amongst the groups, there is very good chance that Kari Lake takes the Senate bid in 2024 and rides it into victory and potentially positions herself to be a vice presidential nominee or potentially a presidential nominee in 2028 and beyond. Kari Lake, point blank, is very much considering this run for Senate, at least according to those closest to her, and it makes a lot of sense. The math checks out. She could win the nomination, and in a three-way race, could absolutely win the general. Do I think it's likely? No. But is it possible? Yes. And Republicans should do everything they can at this point to stop the continued line of rejection for those who represent or are President Donald Trump, and they would be not doing that by renominating Kari Lake in 2024. There is one common denominator that has resulted in Republican losses across Arizona for the past 6 consecutive years, and it involves President Donald Trump. And it puts the Republicans in a very interesting position, and the question is, will they catch on to it, will they act on it, and will they prevent someone like Kari Lake from being the Republican nominee for Senate in 2024? Chances are they won't take action, especially considering who they've recently decided to allow lead the Arizona GOP. But there's also a good chance that electability is knocked into them, some sense is knocked into them as well, and they make a decision to, as a party, endorse another candidate or decide to support them directly or indirectly. But altogether, Kari Lake should not be the nominee for Senate in 2024 for the sake of the Arizona Republican Party. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.